Welcome back to The Verdict. It's our continuing coverage of the elections. Well, let's, in keeping up with what are people doing wherever they are, we've got our correspondent, Dobra. She's in Bayelsa now, filling the polls of the people just ahead of the big day. Here she is.
All the materials to get to the voting locations to enable them to vote, whoever they interest to vote.
The experience we used to normally have in Southern Nigeria is transportation. How to transport the materials from INEC headquarters from Yenagua to Poroma. That is the major challenge we have. Material arrive in various polling units very late because of there is no normal a good preparation. Let the security agencies deliver every material to the various polling units.
Bayelsa State is 80% riverine. As such, most of its communities can only be accessed by the use of speedboats such as this. On election morning, the one concern most residents of the riverine communities in Bayelsa State have is how early will the electoral materials get to them? In subsequent elections, they've noticed that there's been this trend of late arrival of electoral materials, and there has been reported cases of hijack along the waterways. The State Resident Electoral Commissioner of Bayelsa State has assured everyone that for the 2019 general election, everything has been put in place to ensure that electoral materials arrive on time, voting and accreditation starts on time, and there would not be any case of hijack of electoral materials. As he describes, a test of hijack would be suicidal. Dobra Timiwood, Channels Television News.
All right, then, welcome back. So let's get back to our studios in Abuja.
Yes, indeed. Talking about security now, I'd like to direct my question to Mr. Eze Chukwuemeka, Executive Director of West Africa Network for Peace Building. I mean, looking at all the preparations ahead of tomorrow, are you satisfied with preparations in terms of security, especially?
Yes, I think to a very large extent we are very satisfied, and we do this. If you take a comparative analysis of what has happened in the past and what is happening at the moment, I think there has been a lot of improvement, and that's because also of the lessons that have been learned in the past. I think like Mr. Frank Mba just rightly said, the kind of threat analysis that we found out that the police is doing at the moment is not a threat analysis that is informed by just the history of violence alone. I think they have also gathered some of the indicators they are using to constantly check the movement of these indicators and the direction they are going. So they are able now to adjust where they think are the hotspots rather than just rely on history of violence. I think the other thing that also informs security is the issue of the predictability of the INEC timetable and activities. And at the national briefing, INEC made it very clear, and everybody is aware of that, that none of the INEC activities which they brought out long time ago, over 1 year ago, has been shifted. I think they've kept their timetable. So when people are able to predict the activities of INEC and what is going to happen next, it improves the confidence in the electoral process. And I also think that for the police especially, I think we saw also a trend in some of the African countries that we have also observed the elections. You notice that if there is a change in the leadership of the police, it creates some dwindling of public confidence, because people will argue that the new leadership may not be able to perfect its security architecture before the elections. But I think in this case, there is actually an improvement in the confidence of the public on the police in terms of their professionalism and in terms of their ability to stay in the middle and provide security for all the parties involved in the electoral process. But I also think that one other thing that has also improved is the role that both the media, focusing also on media regulations, we have had less of the bellicose language and hate speeches, even though for some reasons that we can still not be able to clearly identify, there has been more of pre-election violence. What we used to have before is during the election and immediately the results start coming in. But in this year, we've had more of pre-electoral violence than we used to have in the past. So that's something that we also need to look at. Because from our own opinion, they may not be issues directly related to the elections, but some of the dynamics that already exist within the security environment, which includes like the violent extremism, proliferation of small arms, and presence of mercenaries, and so on and so forth. So they may not be directly related to the conduct of the election, but they also have a way of providing more threats to the security environment.
All right, let me turn to Mr. Mba on this one. There are some protests from opposition groups. They're protesting how 2 suspects who were arrested in Kano metropolis for being in possession of 14 bags of fake ballot paper specimen. What can you tell us about that? Because you understand they've been transferred to SCID.
I may not be able to tell you much about that incident right away because I had an initial brief on it yesterday, and I've not had any brief on it today. And beyond what is already in the papers, I don't seem to have any additional information today until I get a more informed briefing from the Commissioner of Police in charge of Kano. But like you also have seen from news sources, preliminary investigations that were carried out actually pointed to the fact that those ballot papers were actually fake. They were samples, so to say, that were printed for educational purposes, and that's the information I have. But as it is now, I think we should just leave our fingers crossed until the investigations are over, and then we will know precisely what will happen. But like I've said repeatedly, in the course of this election, we will enforce the Electoral Act to the letter. We will not compromise in any way or in any form, and will not allow any of our personnel to compromise. And that explains why the IGP did set up a special electoral offenses investigation team. That team will be domiciled at First Headquarters Abuja, is headed by the Commissioner of Police in charge of the First Legal Department, and we will have sub units of that team deployed in all the states of the Federation. And what we'll be doing specifically, what investigators in that team specifically will be doing is focusing on suspects arrested in relation or in connection with electoral offenses, and working with INEC legal department to ensure that those offenses are thoroughly, comprehensively investigated, and persons who are implicated are conclusively prosecuted in course of law. So trust me and trust the leadership of the force to do what is right now and always.